timing. This is something of an expertise that comes with practice and experience that can be quantified but varies so much in all of its applications and can be used in different ways in the same application that it's something quite difficult to apply in a universal sort of way. In this example, we have a character who's dazed, who then shakes his head to sort of reinvigorate his senses and then ends up looking aggressively in a direction. Now, this could all happen in an even flow, but the reality is with timing, we need to gauge where the most important elements of our attention should be applied and then lay them out in a way that communicates most clearly to the viewer what they're watching and how they should be directing their attention. In my opinion, one of the most pivotal times to apply your sense of timing and to cultivate how it's going to end up communicating these things is in the stage that we develop an animatic. And even in the preliminary animatic created for our example animation here, the timing of breaking apart these actions remains, for the most part, exactly the same. So we have one central action to begin with, which is a bounce into frame, which is sort of separated from the rest by a slight pause until we have the next action, which is sitting up, and so on and so forth until all of these actions are broken up into specific areas. And then we apply the animation over the top. As you can tell, there are brief pauses between these sections, and it gives the viewer time to understand as best as possible what they're actually watching. And as we have these pauses, it can't be so long as we lose their interest or we soften the impact of what we're demonstrating, but they also can't be so short as to not allow the viewer time to understand what's happening. So we have the bounce into frame and we have enough of a pause that we can then see what's happening as we move into the next section. These pauses don't need to be dead space. We don't need to have the character staying perfectly still and assume that the viewer needs time to catch up. But what we can do is actually slow our motions out, have secondary motion, for example here in the tail, and then slow our next motion in and accelerate it and then continue on. So we're applying other elements here such as slow in and slow out and secondary motion or follow through to help space apart our sections of animation. But it's also good to break down the themes into separate sections. So for example, we might have theme 1, which is the bounce in 3 arcs. So that's our first section. Our second section is him sitting up. And then as he sits up, our third section is when he shakes his head. And then there's another space between section 4 where he arcs back and then kicks forward. There's even a slight pause in the middle of section 4 between these kicks because we're seeing that there's a pause between the anticipation and release. But as you can see, the main stage has been animated in 4 main sections until we move on to the 5th where he is walking off the screen. Studying the movement of actors or performers on stage and films can be really useful when you're animating human or animal characters. The reason is we often break up our own motion into sections and segments, and it most clearly demonstrates something that's happening and it communicates to the viewer the story that we're trying to tell. Thanks for watching through this tutorial, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.